Good morning. I am Bob Sanborn. I'm President and CEO of Children at Risk, and we're here for this quick press gathering to focus on our brand new release of the Growing Up in Houston Guide, which we've been doing for 35 years. This is a piece of research where we look at everything that's going on with children in our area. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. We have a great panel of guests to talk about some of the specifics in each of the area. Joining us today are Dr. Michael Chang, who's a professor of pediatrics and director of the Pediatric Antimicrobial Stewardship at the McGovern Medical School at UT. Dr. Chang, thank you very much for being here. Also with us is Marcy Melvin, who's the deputy director of the Hackett Center for Mental Health. Marcy, thank you very much for being here to talk a little bit about mental health. Crystal Gomez is with us. She's the interim director of the Children's Immigration Network at Children at Risk and one of the managing attorneys over at the Texas Immigration Law Council. Thanks so much, Crystal, for being here. Santrice Jones-Hare is with us. She's the director of the Greater Houston Strong Start Alliance at Children at Risk. Thank you very much, Santrice. And Dr. Angel Harris, who's the VP over at the United Way of Greater Houston. Thank you very much, Dr. Harris, for being here with us today. For 35 years, we've been doing the Growing Up in Houston. It's changed a lot. And I remember when it used to be more of an almanac of sort of everything that was happening with children. I think today, if I said almanac, most young people would not even know what I was talking about. But it's now focused on what is really important around our children in Harris County and around the greater Houston area and what's working for us, what's not working for us, but really a pure look at some of the data and what we should be alarmed at. When we look at our area, in the state of Texas, we have over 7 million children. A quarter of all of those kids, a little over a quarter, live in the Houston area. So this is important for us and it's important for Texas. I think that's what's really important. It's also important to note that 7 in 10 of the school students in Harris County are economically disadvantaged. They're growing up in low-income households. So the burden becomes even more important for us to understand that we want these kids to be successful. We want things to work out for all of our children. Because I'll say this probably more than one time, because the future of Houston is really dependent upon these children. And when so many children are growing up economically disadvantaged, we need to do extra to make sure those kids are getting over and beyond these obstacles that are being laid out in front of them. One of the quick things that I think are important to understand about our most recent piece of research and what's happening in Houston around children is that there's some positive trends and there's some negative trends. I'll start off with two of the big positives. One is early education. We have this renewed effort to really make sure that our children are served well in the early years. More Houstonians, more Texans understand that the best investment that we can make to make sure that our children are successful is by putting them in high quality early education. We need to work together on this. One of the things that we see around early education is that there are too many separate groups doing separate things in Texas and in Houston, and especially in Houston. And we really need to work together because this is going to be a real important development for the future as we work through this. 87 zip codes in Harris County are subsidy childcare deserts, meaning low-income working families who need childcare cannot access it or afford it. So this is a big obstacle for us. We're going to need to work together on this. The second positive trend is in K-12 education. Sort of the very public schools that many of us see as sort of the way to pull children out of poverty. If they're getting a good education, the chances of success are significantly greater. Nearly a half of Houston area schools that serve high levels of economic need. Again, this is well above the state average. But even then, we're seeing some schools that are outperforming state averages. So we're doing a very good job on what we call gold ribbon schools. Those that have over 75% low-income families, but they're getting an A or a B in our rankings or in the state rankings. And so this is an amazing thing. And one of the things that we've seen change over the years is that it used to be that when we would do this survey, we found very few schools that were an A or B that were serving these low-income families. Now we're seeing real differences. So our schools are getting better all across the Houston area. This is an amazing thing, and it's something that we really should be proud of. When we get to some of the negative things, I think we'll hear from more of our participants today about this. But one is that in the area of food insecurity, we're seeing increasing efforts by the federal government to limit access to food, whether that be school lunches or breakfasts or SNAP, the equivalent of food stamps. This is something that we really need to work hard on. The state really needs to take a lead among states to say we need to make sure that our kids are fed. If children aren't getting that very basic thing around being fed in school or out of school, we've lost all hope because a hungry child is not going to do well in early education. A hungry child is not going to do well in K through 12. So this is one of those basic things that we need to be doing well. Sometimes you'll hear allegations of fraud or the wrong kids getting it. We don't see much of that at all. And basically what we need to be doing is figure out how do we feed and make sure that our children are food secure. Another thing, and we'll talk about this in a little bit in two different areas, is health. One of the things that we see is that one in four children has a mental health or behavioral health condition, and it's something that we really need to work on. Marcy will be talking about this in a little bit. But the other thing is health insurance. Right now in Houston, we are the most uninsured city health-wise, health insurance-wise, of any city in the developed world. Let that sink in for a minute. Of all of the developed world, it's Houston that leads in uninsured insurance, and especially when it comes to uninsured insurance amongst children. Our children should not be in this city where we have this great medical center, which Dr. Chang is a part of. We should be making sure that our kids have access to health, have access to medical facilities, and without insurance, they're not going to be there. They need a medical home. That's very, very important. The final thing, a negative thing, is that we're living under this cloud for a great many of our kids, about a quarter of our kids to a third are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. We're living in an environment that is demonizing those very children and their families. And we need to make sure that we're not traumatizing our children. These are children that are part of our future. And what's interesting is people, I've seen people single this out as like, we're only talking about undocumented immigrants. But that pressure, that trauma affects all Latino and all international families. This is something we're seeing time and time again. This is what the data is telling us. And so it's very important that as we move forward, we understand this has a deep impact on our workforce. This has a deep impact on our future. And if we want Texas to be that vibrant economy that we love, we're going to need to do something about this. And we need to come to terms that Texas, of all places, should be super pro immigration, super pro making sure that we take care of those families that are in our state, no matter where they come from. This is something that we're going to have to struggle with as we reach into the future. We are talking about kids. We're just talking about children here. But when we talk about children, we're talking about our future. We're talking about our workforce. We're talking about the Texas economy. We're talking about the Houston economy. So we believe this data should push us to act here at Children at Risk. We've always believed that. For 35 years, it's been data and what policy action can we take. So this should guide our investments in targeted ways, really so that we can produce the best outcomes for children and families. We are growing in Houston, but also too many families are really struggling to get by. And this is one of the things that the Growing Up in Houston book really is showing us, is that we need to do a better job to make sure all these struggling families, these children that are within these families, we're doing everything possible to make sure that they're successful. It's worked for many years for us. It's worked for Houston. And we want it to continue to work during these very trying times for many of us. Let's talk a little bit more about health. Dr. Michael Chang is with us from UT. Dr. Chang, give us sort of your take on all of this.
Yeah, no, healthcare access is so important to both moms and kids, right? So maternal health affects children before they're even born. And if children are uninsured or don't have access to healthcare, they might miss checkups. And we know that poor health can make it harder to succeed in school, and struggles in school can then cause this vicious cycle where you have mental and physical health outcomes that are worse than they could have been. And so, supporting healthcare access for moms and kids is one of the best ways to help our community have a brighter future and be stronger. And so uninsured children and missed vaccinations, they leave the whole community more vulnerable. When children don't have access to healthcare or health coverage, they're more likely to miss routine checkups, vaccines, and early treatment for infections. And that can increase the risk of preventable illnesses spreading in schools and neighborhoods. And vaccination, we know, is one of the most effective and safest ways we have to protect children, families and communities and those who are medically vulnerable from preventable infectious diseases. Again, that will minimize and improve minimize school absenteeism and improve school attendance, and we know those lead to better outcomes in the future. In addition, school attendance really is a public health issue, not just about education. We know that absenteeism can be a warning sign that kids have an untreated physical illness that can lead to mental health issues and mental health needs. And so this is really a public health issue that affects not just that individual family or that individual child, but our whole community. And so I think just improving our families' ability to access healthcare, making sure our kids are covered so they can get their, prevent their vaccines to prevent communicable diseases. That's going to help parents stay at work more, kids go to school more, and that's just going to improve their outcomes for the future for our community.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Chang. I do want to ask you a question. Now, you and I have talked about this a lot, but there seems to be this increasing level of disregard for the need for vaccinations or to get their vaccinations on time. In a sense, we should be a lot more scared about that than sort of we're hearing in the media, I would feel.
No, absolutely. I think, we are seeing widespread outbreaks of measles. I think there was just a report recently from the CDC that the outcomes of the measles outbreak in West Texas were worse than we actually estimated originally, with about 1 in 5 kids requiring hospitalization. So, I think these vaccine preventable illnesses, again, they impact not only the child and the parents, but the whole community. And we can prevent them safely and effectively with vaccines, as long as we can get these kids into healthcare.
Yeah, very good. Dr. Chang from UT Health. Thank you very much, Michael. Marcy Melvin is with us. She's the Deputy Director over the Hackett Center for Mental Health. They do great work over there. Marcy, thank you so much for being here. What's your take on all of this new data or this data around children and mental health?
Thank you, Dr. Bob, and thank you, Children at Risk. I think one of the findings that I have to highlight is that mental health challenges among children are no longer an issue. I mean, this is a community issue. When 1 in 4 children are experiencing mental or behavioral health conditions, we can't rely exclusively on specialty mental health care to meet their needs. We need a broader approach that strengthens the environments where children spend their time, which is with their families, schools, childcare settings, faith communities, and in neighborhoods. Mental health is built through everyday relationships and experience. Research consistently shows that supportive relationships with caring adults is among the most strongest protective factors for children and adolescents. When children feel safe, connected, and supported, they're more likely to succeed academically and develop healthy coping skills, which will help them navigate adverse situations more successfully. The goal is not to simply treat mental illness when it appears. The goal needs to be to create conditions that promote mental wellness from the very start. Something else that the report highlights that I want to bring up is that there's an ongoing counselor shortage in schools. So while increasing access to school-based mental health professionals remain important, we have to be realistic. Even with significant investments, we're unlikely to have enough counselors to provide intensive support to every child who may need it. Harris County schools have historically operated with a counselor to student ratio well above recommended levels, which means we need to equip teachers, coaches, parents, childcare professionals, and other trusted adults with the knowledge and tools to recognize concerns early, support resilience, and connect youth to appropriate resources. I mean, this is where universal supports is so important. And when we think about universal supports, we are thinking about this will benefit all children, not just those children with diagnosis, right? And so I'm talking about positive relationships with caring adults, safe and supportive school environments, social and emotional skill development, opportunities for connection and belonging, because early identification and intervention when concerns arise. These are the approaches that help children who are struggling while also strengthening the well-being of those who may never require formal treatment. So if we want to improve youth mental health, we got to start early. The foundations for emotional regulation, healthy relationships, resilience are built in the early years of life. Supporting parents, caregivers, strengthening early childhood environments, promoting healthy child and family relationships are some of the most effective long-term mental health investments that a community can make.
Very good. Marcy, I think one of the great things for me when we see sort of the 20 years that I've been involved doing this book is that the awareness around mental health is actually grown. People understand, that it's a challenge because I remember the day when Texas was all about, well, we can pull ourselves up our own bootstraps. We don't need to worry about this. But I think people understand this is a health concern, right? For children. And there are children that are suffering through trauma. There are children that absolutely need that school counselor, not to be administrator, but to be a counselor. It's such a big deal.
Absolutely.
Good.
And I think it's important that we think beyond mental health as solely a healthcare issue.
Yeah.
Mental health is an education issue, a family issue, a workforce issue, a community issue.
Yeah.
And in order to have healthy children, we need healthy environments.
Thank you, Marcy, very, very much. And thank you for all the work that you guys are doing over there at the Hackett Center. Crystal Gomez is with us. Crystal is the interim director of the Children's Immigration Network at Children at Risk and the managing attorney at the Texas Immigration Law Council. She's doing a lot of immigration stuff. Crystal, what is your take on this and reflection on how our children, especially that 1/3 to 1/4 of all our children that are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, how are they doing?
Thanks, Dr. Bob. Thank you, all of our speakers, for talking about this stuff today. So the Growing Up in Houston reports found that 450,000 kids in Harris County, American kids in Harris County, live with at least one foreign-born parent. So we know that these kids who are entitled to every single protection that any other child is entitled to, aren't necessarily receiving those protections right now because of fear, because of their sense of safety and community have been rocked in recent months. When fear is pulling families apart like this, it means that those students are no longer accessing the systems that are designed to serve them. So the Houston Chronicle had reported this last February that HISD had lost 4,000 students in last year. That was a 22% decline in student population. And these aren't just undocumented students. These are documented and undocumented immigrant students that have been affected and are no longer in our schools. That means that they're not getting access to lunches when they need them, if they qualify for them. They're not getting counseling like we were just talking about. They're not getting the early intervention that determine what the rest of their academic lives are going to look like. The Migration Policy Institute also estimated that 70,000 school-age kids in Fort Bend, Harris, and Montgomery counties were without legal status. And 200,000 parents were at risk of deportation. And when we do know now also that when a parent is detained, those kids, it's not just about missing their families, which we know is rocking those families apart, but they're also losing economic stability overnight. They're losing the sense of belonging. They're losing access to schools because who's going to take them? So when a family believes that any pediatrician visits, any visit to food shelter or any kind of access to benefits might lead to deportation risk like this, they stop going. We also saw really recently that in Houston, the Cinco de Mayo festival was canceled out of concerns for community safety. And that tells us that this fear is running pretty deep. And it doesn't just end with community events, it goes all the way through all of our systems, schools, healthcare, everything. So the kids in Houston, or especially those kids who are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves, are struggling. Not just because of ICE enforcement issues, but everything that tumbles after that, and fear. So,
Crystal, I know you speak Spanish, so if we could, algunas palabras para la prensa latino, Telemundo, Univisión. Podemos hablar sobre lo que yo creo que la cosa más importante aquí es, ¿qué es la cosa para padres? ¿Qué quieren, qué es lo que padres necesitan saber sobre este reportaje esta investigación, ¿qué es la cosa más importante para padres?
Lo más importante ahorita es que que ellos saben que no están solos y que lo que está pasando con sus familias sí es importante, importa a todos, a nosotros también, y que esta ciudad lo está documentando. Um, Hoy escuchamos que niños en Harris County no tienen seguro médico, muchos niños en Harris County, que uno de cada 4 niños tiene una condición de salud mental y que las escuelas no tienen suficientes consejeros para atenderlos, que solo existen 21 lugares subsidiados de cuidado infantil por cada 100 niños de familias trabajadoras de bajos ingresos y que más de 450,000 niños nacidos aquí en los Estados Unidos viven en hogares con al menos un padre inmigrante. Estas familias en este momento tienen miedo de acceder a exactamente los servicios que acabamos de describir. Eso es lo que está en juego. Y no es un problema de inmigración solamente, es un problema de salud, es un problema de educación, un problema económico y afecta a toda esta ciudad y toda la gente que vive aquí.
Una otra cosa que es muy importante es que la gente que vive en Houston tienen que saber que la mayoría de nuestros niños son latinos. Y eso es una cosa que muchas personas no hablan de eso. Es una cosa muy, muy importante. Gracias mucho, Crystal.
Gracias a ustedes.
All right, let's go. Santrice, did you want to go in Spanish as well? I just didn't know if you wanted
I think
to.
I'll save that for another day, Dr. Bob.
Santrice Jones-Hare is with us. She's the director of the Greater Houston Strong Start Alliance, one of the great early education groups at Children at Risk. Tell us a little bit, Santrice, what's your take on what's going on in early education? Some good, some puzzling news. What's your take?
Yes, thank you for that question, and thank you for all of our panelists for being here today. When we're looking at early care and education, a lot of the topics that you all have shared and highlighted today all thread through early childhood education as well. So if children aren't physically healthy, they are not in a mental health state in which they can function. And if they are scared to come to school, their parents don't know if they will be there to pick them up. All of those components, including immigration, impact early childhood education. And we're seeing that across the greater Houston area as well. More specifically, when we look at early care and education and we think about it in terms of access to quality care, early childhood care and education, we're finding that families are working. They want their children to be in high quality learning environments. However, access to those high quality environments are limited. And a lot of that is because of our economic economy at this point in time, the wealth of our area as well. Families are needing that subsidized care because we know the cost of everything is increasing right now. So if you have to choose between having your lights on and being able to send your child to childcare, a lot of our families are having to make that difficult decision because we're not seeing enough in terms of access and affordability for our families to be able to have childcare here in Houston. You were saying earlier that we had childcare deserts, approximately 87 zip codes that are here within the greater Houston area, and that is very true. Another startling fact that we found is only 13% of those families who desire to access subsidized care, scholarships for their children to be in those high quality environments can actually gain and acquire access to that. So I was recently asked a question. What do you recommend for families that are family planning when it comes to quality childcare? And my recommendation was as soon as that child is born and you know you're going to need access to quality care and some support with it, go ahead and apply to that subsidized care because our wait lists are astronomical at this point in time. Families are waiting up to 2 years for their child to be able to access the high quality learning that we know is needed. We hear about the workforce as well. We hear that we want to have a workforce that is strong and thriving, people that are able to problem solve and have those higher order functioning skills. All of those things are found in the earliest years. And if our children don't have access to high quality care and education during those early years, then we're not setting ourselves up for success in the long term. So those are a few of the things that we're seeing when it comes to early care and education across Houston. But like you said, there are plenty of positives as well. There's a lot of momentum around early care and education, and us coming together and coalescing as a city to move these efforts forward are truly what's needed for our kiddos.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Thank you so much, Centrise, and thank you for the work that you and all the collaborators as part of the Strong Start Network are doing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Let's go to Dr. Angel Harris. She's the VP over at United Way of Greater Houston. Angel, a lot of this work could not be done without the United Way. We want to thank you for that. But from your perspective, from an organization that does such great work in our city over at the United Way, what's your take on the research?
Well, growing up in Houston is a powerful force for understanding, illuminating, and uplifting the lives of our children and the families who shape their world. Each new insight brings us closer to a Houston where every child's potential is recognized, supported, and celebrated. Because this report plays such a vital role in our community's future, United Way has championed and invested in it from the very beginning. We are profoundly grateful for our partnership in bringing this work to life. And together, we're offering Houston not only just data, but a deeper, more compassionate understanding of what it truly means to grow up here and a shared vision where all of our children can thrive. Education is an important pillar in United Way's integrated community investment strategy, and we're so very grateful for this information, for the data, and for this partnership. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Angel, very, very much. And thanks to you and all your colleagues over there at the United Way. Please give them our best and our thanks for the work that's happening over there. I think I'll summarize what we're doing here in terms of saying, yes, everyone cares about kids. It's easy to say, yes, I'm all pro-child. I want kids to get their very best. But here's the reality is that we don't have to love children just because it's the right thing to do or because it's humanitarian or like we love our nieces and nephews and our own kid. All we have to do is care about the future of our city. If we want our city to do well economically, if we want to have a great workforce, then we need to care about children. And so even if you have to put this into monetary figures, even if you have to put this into sort of stark reality, what this means for the future, you want to care about children. And growing up in Houston is really just a compendium of all those pieces of data that tell us this is what we should be alarmed about, and this is what we should be celebrating, and this is where we need to go. And what we're saying today is there are some areas that really need some attention here in Houston, and we need to pay attention to that. There's plenty to celebrate. One of the great things is that we have terrific optimism, but sometimes the data does not back up our optimism, and we need to pay attention to the data and understand we do need to do better with our kids. With all of our kids. And if you grow up in an affluent suburb, your kids are going to be just fine. But the majority of our children need a little bit of extra attention. And that's important if we care about our future here in Houston, here in the state of Texas. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chang, very much. Thank you, Dr. Harris, Santrice, Crystal, Marcy. Thank you guys very, very much for all the work that all your organizations are doing. And thank you for listening to our press conference, all of you. Take care. We do this for children.